anybody who's just joining us, I'm talking, of course, with author Richard Van Camp. And we're going to be focusing on your books for older kids.
Okay.
So I just wanted people to see at least one of your books for younger kids, because we're going to touch on this later. That one of the things that really fascinated me about you, and we'll talk about this later, is just the range you have and how different a lot of your books are. So I just wanted people to see this before we talk about your horror, suspense, thriller books. But anyway, first, why don't we start? You can just introduce yourself and tell us, what was your journey to becoming an author?
Well, Leanna, first of all, Masi Cho, thank you so much for having me. I want to say in my mother's language, Si hobatsa gotsoete, hani ho de sagya masi. My friends, hello and welcome. My name is Richard Van Camp. I am broadcasting live with Leanna from Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta, where we have our home and our community. I really am grateful to have time with you today and really celebrate the gift of being a writer and gift of being a storyteller. And so if you want to know my journey to becoming a writer, so I was born and raised in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, Treaty 8 country. I was born September 8, 1971. I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s, and I'm a pop culture junkie. I'm actually wearing my Stormtrooper moccasins for you today. This is how much I care and adore you and wanted to honor you. And my Millennium Falcon's in the back, and my Last of Us poster is there. And
hold on. There's my Yoda poster.
Oh, bless you! Thank you. Somebody actually just crocheted me a little baby Yoda, but it's downstairs. It has.
I love it.
The child has not made their way yet up here. So growing up, I mean, I was just the biggest fan of anything not from the Northwest Territories, and I think we were pirating illegally all the movie channels in the whole wide world that we weren't supposed to be watching. So we grew up with, the new TNN and the movie channel and HBO and Cinemax. And so I was watching everything that's on the Criterion collection. I was watching when I was 9. And then we had, of course, Star Wars and Savage Sword of Conan and, all the good stuff like Aliens, Predator. And I had the best childhood, and I was a big comic book collector. And I mean it, I was the biggest pop culture junkie growing up. And, my favorite writers growing up were Judy Blume and S.E. Hinton and Stephen King. And then I remember when I was 19, Leanna, I just said out loud, I want to write something that I would like to read. I just realized that nobody was telling our stories. Nobody was talking about having grandparents who were medicine people, or a mother who went to residential school, or, how in Fort Smith we can two-step to anything, and how I used to make nunchucks out of hockey sticks and a stolen bicycle chain, and I could make throwing stars out of pop cans. It was just the greatest. The 80s were fantastic. Thank goodness I was raised before the internet. So that line, I would like to write something that I would like to read. That's always been my mantra in all of the books, right? I'm still not seeing what I want to read in the world yet. And maybe there will be a writer that can nail all that. And maybe there's a reason I've done 30 books in 30 years in different genres. They say a bee can pollinate up to 100 flowers every time it flies. That's kind of like me. All I want to do is pollinate and bring joy and light and happiness and scare people and terrify people at the same time, right? A little bit of pinhead over here. So that really was my journey. And then so I started working on a novel called The Lesser Blessed. And it took me 5 years. And I called an agent named Carolyn Swayze, who actually just wrote to me 30 seconds ago. And we sold it to Douglas McIntyre within 2 weeks. And that was my first book was in 1996 with Douglas and McIntyre. And it's amazing because Douglas and McIntyre, 30 years later, published the biggest novel of my life, which is Beast. And what's great is my editor for The Lesser Blessed was Barbara Pulling, and she was my editor 30 years later for Beast. And Anna at Douglas and McIntyre hired 5 different editors to work on the novel, and Barbara Pulling was the very first. So I actually just took Barbara Pulling out for lunch a couple of weeks ago in Vancouver, and I said, look at us.
Yeah.
30 years later, still going strong, still waking up in a handstand every single day. So grateful for this beautiful life. So that really has been how it all started. That was my journey. I'm so grateful to Carolyn Swayze and Douglas and McIntyre and every publisher that I've worked with, all the editors, because it really, Leanna, are editors who bring out the best in our craft. And it's also our collaborators. So working on, Wheetago War with Christopher Shy, for example, my dream artist, working with Scott Henderson on the Spirit of Denendeh series, working with Julie Flett on We Sang You Home and Little You, when you enter the dance, and I was just talking to Christopher Shy, the artist for Wheetago War last night, when you're in the dance, whether somebody is adapting one of your stories for a movie, or you're working on a children's book or a graphic novel, or you've got a great editor, and it's that dance of trust, that collaboration that begins. When you're in it, anything can happen. That is the sweet spot, and I love being there. It takes a long time to get there, and I was just saying to some writers just the other day, when you're writing on your own stuff and you haven't shown the world, like when I was working on Wheetago War for years by myself, when you're working on the lore and the creature design and the character building, you actually have all the power. That I love that too. When you're not letting any light into your world that you haven't already orchestrated. So I love being a creator. I love being published. I love what I'm working on right now in secret. It all needs to happen. There's an alchemy, and I feel like I'm cheating at life. Like, when we were a couple of years ago during the height of the big virus that's going around with COVID, I remember just receiving 4 panels from Christopher Shy on a Tuesday morning, and I just couldn't believe that it was Christmas in July. While the rest of the world was terrified, I was like, I can't believe I get to work with my dream artist. I wanted to work with Christopher for 15 years before. I mean, I have all of his books, and for me to work with him, and for me, to get a text at 11 o'clock at night saying, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I'm going to try harder on this one," and it's already I don't understand what he's working. It's you stop. You're going to break it. Just stop it. But he's like me, where he'll send you something on a Monday, and he'll say, "This is the greatest thing I've ever done." And then Wednesday, actually, a lot of people I work with don't even read anything I send them until a couple of days later. They say, "Well, you're just going to send me something 48 hours from now saying it's even better. So why am I hyperventilating?" You know what I mean?
And I do want to interject that I've gotten to see the Wheetago book that you did with Christopher Shy, and the illustration is just amazing. Yeah. It really is. And it adds just kind of the atmosphere he achieves with it. It adds so much. I mean, the two go together so well.
Well, thank you. With the beauty of Wheetago War Roth, book 1 in the trilogy,
right,
is I got to work with a lot of people I grew up with. So you see the main characters in the graphic novel. And, for Glenn is actually the former chief of the Salt River First Nations in our community. Wow. So to work with people I grew up with my whole life, and to work with Joel Evans, who plays Larry in The Lesser Blessed, the movie that's based on my novel. You can watch it for free tonight on Tubi. Or David Burke from our community. He stars in The Revenant. He also stars in a movie called Cut Bank with Billy Bob Thornton and Bruce Dern, professional actor. And then Dwight Moses, who stars in our movie Three Feathers, which is based on my graphic novel with Crystal Mateus or Neva Mateus. Working with real people as models in our book was just actually made it way more fun, because we really wanted to honor them. And then Mila Antoine from Fort Simpson and her son Oz, she's the chief's daughter in the movie The Revenant. And to work with her and her son Oz with Christopher, I mean, look at this artwork. I'm sorry about the glare, but this is all magic to me. And Christopher's, we're working on books 2 and 3 right now with the editing, because we want to hone it. But I think I'm the luckiest man alive. Seriously. Imagine getting that on a Tuesday morning, 6 o'clock. You're still in your little jammy jams. The coffee's just right. Hey, nobody's up. You got the whole house to yourself.
Amazing.
This is the good stuff. Hey.
Well, tell us more, since we're talking about the Wheetago series. Tell us more about that. I read that it was described as an Indigenous take on the end of the world monster story. But of course, as you mentioned, it's based on very old stories. Now, the Denendeh traditional stories, but now put in the context of global warming, capitalistic greed. What do you hope people take away from reading the book? And I also should mention, for people who are watching this in Canada, it's already available. If you're watching this in the US, we have to wait until next June, but I'm sure you could probably go ahead and pre-order it. But it's not available here yet. But and I think the Beast also, Beast. But
so, do you want me to talk about Wheetago War Roth?
Yeah.
It's so scary. It's so scary. So Wheetago War Roth. Let me give the plot. And honestly, if people want books, just get in touch with the publisher, Renegade Arts Entertainment. They ship to the US all the time. So Wheetago War Roth is about a gentleman. He's Indigenous. He's known as the child finder. He has single-handedly returned over 500 children who have been stolen by human traffickers and really bad people. So he's already a star. He's already, a celebrity. He's known and respected right across Canada in this story. And in the tar sands in northern Alberta, this story goes that there was some digging in a protected area, or spiritually important area, and big industry made a promise never to dig up that part of the country, but they did in exploration of oil. And what they did was they dug up bodies of the Wheetago that had been killed and disposed of by Wheetago hunters. So we open with the Wheetago pulling themselves back together, calling others back, and also calling the Na'acho. And the Na'acho, we were told by George Blondin, a wonderful Saulteaux Dene elder, that when the world was new, there were these giant cannibalistic animals like eagles and bats and beavers, but they were cannibals and they hunted the people. And according to our traditions, there were two brothers, Yamaraya and Yamaja, and they walked the earth giving the people and the animals laws. So a long time ago, they met with the Na'acho, the giant animals, and they said, this needs to end. You're not here to eat the people. We're going to shrink you down, and you're not going to eat the people anymore. But there were several animals that escaped. But in my story, not only have the Wheetago returned in Alberta, Canada, they know how to call the Na'acho back. Right. So this is why you see that huge grizzly, that they're calling the undead back. So they've invaded Edmonton, they've invaded parts of Alberta, and Ross is bit. But when he's bit, Leanna, he's still holding one of our traditional medicines. This is rat root.
I had never heard of that before until I saw it in your book.
Well, it's really interesting because the Lakota call this bear root, but this is the root that the muskrat love, and it's one of our boss medicines. So because Ross is holding this medicine when he's bit, he only turns half Wheetago. And because he's half, he's transformed into a Wheetago, and he knows how they think, and he knows what they want. But his family is trapped in Edmonton, and so he and a bunch of escaped convicts need to make a peace treaty for friendship because they can go where he can't. And so there's this really interesting treaty between these prisoners who actually are lying about their pasts. There's a man who's half Wheetago, and the reason it's called Roth is that's Ross's Wheetago name. The Wheetago call him Roth. And so this is book one, and they meet a single mother with a little boy, and she has a pistol with 3 shells left. And so they all have to organize themselves around a cabin before they decide to go back into Edmonton to save his wife and daughter. And where we end.
Question about whether they can trust each other, especially I know the mom is like, what am I getting into here with these convicts?
And a monster.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like it's destined to be a movie. So I'm excited about books 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. Book 3 is called All Out War, and that's in the future. You'll see 2 lifetimes from now. You get to meet Dove and Old Man and Yellow Hand and Old Ma, and that's really where you see shamanism and you see medicine power fully returned. And it's great. It's just so great, Leanna. I'm just so excited.
So what is it you love about this genre so much? I mean, it is really fun to, I love it too. It's really fun to read, but I know you said that you were always interested in these kind of stories like Stephen King and so on. What is it you love about it so much?
Well, I was just saying in a different interview that I think great horror unzips your soul. Mm-hmm. And I think that great horror also plants seeds of light. So maybe somebody, we're talking big oil executive, they're getting ready to go and develop, and they go, wait a minute, isn't that a culturally protected area? Mm. Maybe they're not telling us the whole truth about why we're never supposed to dig there. And maybe they just, for once, listen to the people and back off.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. I love it.
I'm also really proud to really honor the late and great Saulteaux Dene elder George Blondin with his teachings about Yamaraya and Yamaja and the Na'acho. You know, I was George's editor for the last book he ever published when he was still alive. It's called Trail of the Spirit, Mysteries of Medicine Power Revealed. And he's one of the reasons I'm a storyteller to this day. He came to visit us when I was actually going to be a land claims negotiator. I was going to school and college in 1991, and he came to visit us on an author tour. and he was only supposed to stay for 30 minutes. He stayed for 3 hours, kind of like me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's missing all the visual cues that, maybe we should wrap it. Anyway, people are turning off the lights. People are setting up sleeping bags. People have gone fetal. I'm still going. Where are you going? We got so much to
There's so
talk
much to
about.
talk about.
I don't get out. This is my little chance to shine. You know what I mean? So I'm really proud of book one. I can't wait for you to see book two. I can't wait for you to see, because what I loved about Stephen King when I was growing up was wondering, how on earth are they ever going to get out of this? I remember just always asking that question, and I love being able to pack a story so tight that people are hopefully are going, how on earth there's no, you can't win. There's no way you're going to win.
Right.
Wait till you see what we got planned.
I love it. Do you know when those are going to be out?
No idea. No clue. Nobody tells me anything. That's true.
Well, and switching gears a little bit, I mean, Beast has also just come out, and it's kind of along these veins, but different. I mean, the Wheetago book, that series is graphic novel. This is a, more traditional novel, but it also has those elements of suspense and horror, and also has that element of kind of ancient spirits being called back to a contemporary problem. Although it's a problem that's kind of something that's been going along for a while, and it also pulls in your love of the 80s and pop culture and all of that. So tell us more about that and kind of the inspiration, because if I remember right, it's actually based on an actual treaty that you had heard about growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. So Beast is about a 17-year-old Pleacho Dene. In those days, we were known as the Dog Rib people. So we have a 17-year-old Dog Rib young man named Lawson Soren. And the novel takes place in 1986, I believe. And it's either 84 or 86. I think it's 86. Do you remember when it takes place? I think it takes place in 86. Jeez, I better do some research here. It's 1986 in Fort Summer, Northwest
Right.
Territories. So, yeah, every once in a while, steel trap, nothing gets in, nothing gets out. So it's 1986, and a 17-year-old Dog Rib teenager named Lawson Soren. He is what we call a Yabati in our language. He's a protector of the treaty. And the treaty, for those of you who don't know, a long time ago in the north, there was tribal warfare between the Dog Rib and the Chipewyan. And this happened for decades. And it was the spirit of revenge, and it was brutal, and there's blood on everybody's hands with this. And there were two leaders, Akecho and Edzo. And Akecho was the Chipewyan war chief, and Edzo was the leader for the Dog Rib. And they made peace at Mesa Lake. They made peace. Thank goodness they made peace. And the people danced, the Chipewyan and the Dog Rib danced together for 3 days in celebration. They feasted for 3 days. And I was just talking to Chief Fred Sangrease from the Yellowknives Dene, and he said, if you use Google Maps, you can still see the ring in the earth. You can still see how hard they danced for 3 days. And they made peace. So when we were growing up, we were always told you can never raise your voice or your hands against a Chipewyan in celebration of our peace treaty with the Chipewyan. And so we open, and it's a typical teenager where he's being told, you have to honor the treaty. We have to go clean, the cranes, who are Chipewyan. We have to go clean their yard. We have to cut wood for them, fill their wood box, shovel for their driveways for them in honor of the treaty. So Lawson is a direct descendant of Edzo, and Silver Cranes and his brothers are direct descendants of Akecho. And Lawson doesn't believe it. He can't believe that he's getting suckered into these great afternoons where he's got to help out the Cranes family, who do nothing in return, absolutely. And it's about Silver Cranes, who is a bully, and it's about Silver Cranes calling an ancient spirit back to the world for medicine power. And this spirit wants Lawson to break that treaty so that war can return between the Dog Rib. And this thing feeds on war. And so it's up to Lawson Soren and his dear friend Sherry Burns, who's Métis and psychic, and Isaiah Valentine, who's a Cree grass dancer who's just come up from Saskatchewan. It's up to those three to face this spirit and stop it because it wants everything. It wants our world. Yep. Once again, up to the Indigenous to save everybody. Yes. Once again, can I just say?
And they do.
And
of course, not to give any spoilers, but something I think is so interesting is when I feel like a lot of books that are coming out are about Indigenous identity are often, not all of them, but they're often Indigenous in comparison to the white or in relation to the white. And this is more about amongst different Indigenous groups. And as you just mentioned, the three main teenagers are from different nations. And so I thought that was interesting, but also, there are all the typical things that you would find in any novel about this age, about trying to figure out who you are in relation to your family and what you've kind of been told to be. And you bring up issues of sexuality, finding who you are, acceptance, and all of that. And yet it's in the context of this kind of supernatural um, threat, that existential threat. So how did those kind of go together? Do you feel like having the supernatural element helps you kind of see these issues in a different light, or is it just kind of fun? I mean, how do those kind of play together?
Well, I think one of my early editors said, the best part of Beast is that there are no cell phones. You can't just text somebody and say, "Dude, there's an entity on the edge of town that wants planet
Right.
Earth." So they have to figure it out
Right.
as things unfold and as promises are broken and as the threat looms,
Right.
and it takes Lawson breaking the treaty
Mm.
and going to the den where the dead one lives for him to come back and realize that this is all real.
Mm.
So I love in writing, they say tension produces
Mm.
results, right? And in life, tension produces results. So we have a tension here, and this is the biggest thing I've ever written. The manuscript was over 400 pages when Douglas and McIntyre bought it, and so we wanted to add it. We actually shaved off 100 pages to make it the pressure cooker that it is, and I regret nothing. I'm so grateful. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but one of the things I love to write about, and I think that I was told, every writer only explores three main themes in their entire career. I don't know if that's true, but one of the big themes that and it'd be interesting if you were to ask other authors in your wonderful interview series, what are the big themes that you are continuously exploring through your writing? Mine is inheritance. And I
Mm.
think that we're all starving for culture, we're all starving for community, we're all starving for fellowship and friendship. And, growing up in the 70s and 80s, as you know, I was a big pop culture junkie. I still am. But I had a lot of questions like, why can't I speak to my own grandparents?
Mm.
Why was I never taught Clicho? Why do I need translators? Like, why was my mom stolen when she was 5 years old and taken to two different residential schools for 12 years? Why did my mom have a number 12? Why do my uncles never talk about their childhood? Why is alcohol destroying the North?
Right.
And so I had these big questions growing up, and I think that all of my characters are just as starving as I was back then for culture and community and fellowship and inheritance.
Mhm.
So this is really about inheritance and really accepting your role that's been entrusted to you. And Lawson, I think, shines at the end. You're really, he's going to be okay at the end. You know that no matter what happens, he, Sherry, and Isaiah, and a very interesting Red Wolf are going to be able to handle just about anything that's sent Lawson's way. Love that.
Well, actually, that brings me to one of the questions that I had. Looking at, because as I mentioned, you have such a range. We're talking, more about your books for older kids, but you've also written a lot of, you have really adorable board books, and you have a lot of picture books. What do you think is kind of, I mean, you already mentioned about inheritance. What is kind of the connection between those ones for the really young readers and the books that you have for older ones?
Well, I think baby books are so much fun because it's really your chance. It's really my chance to sing my praise for humanity and my hope for humanity. Every child is a miracle. Absolutely. And we've got a new baby book coming out in 2026 with Orca Book Publishers, and we're still working on the title, but it's done. We found out somebody else beat us to the best title in the whole wide world. I had a little cry in the shower about it this morning. Anyways, we will survive. We're gonna come up with something even better,
Yeah.
even cooler.
Yeah.
But I love baby books because it's really my celebration of welcoming all these beautiful new souls to planet Earth. I get to be the biggest cheerleader for humanity in these baby books. And then, with short stories, somebody, did you ever hear that saying, I wrote a novel because I didn't have time to write a short story? Did you ever hear that one?
Oh,
Huh?
and
Who's got 5 short story collections? This guy, right? I don't have an attention span, as you can tell. I'm wandering off all the time. But I love, I think that 30 books in 30 years, here's one thing that I've learned, and that is the story is the boss. The story is the boss. So I'll give you an example. I've got a new short story out in a horror anthology. The short story is called Mouthless. Isn't that disgusting?
Yeah.
Mouthless. It's gross, right? I call it like cavity core. Like it's it's complete gremlin. And I'll tell you what happened. So this is how short stories come.
Mhm.
We were camping somewhere I couldn't even tell you, and I never know where I am. But we were playing hide and seek with our 10-year-old, and it was a hot day, and I was hiding behind a tree, and Azazi our child could not see me. And all of a sudden, Leanna, it started to rain hot sap on my brand new shirt.
Mhm.
As a Virgo, this is a complete disaster. The rest of the summer was a write-off. And I still have this shirt because it's my favorite shirt. But this sap, it
Mhm.
was it was it was eerie. Like, what tree in Alberta rains hot sap below? And as this sap was landing all over this brand new shirt, I saw a whole story. I saw Mouthless, and I just couldn't wait to, enjoying the camping, but I couldn't wait to get home to the big computer here and then write it out. And I wrote it very quick, probably in 2 days. So what I love about being a writer is that a story can happen anytime. Like Little You, we were at a Pearl Jam concert. Eddie Vedder stopped the concert to sing happy birthday to his daughter. And as we were singing happy birthday to his daughter, I literally typed Little You out on my phone. It came to me in 2 minutes. Whereas Beast and Wheetago War, Roth took 7 years. Lester Bless took 5 years. What's the most beautiful thing you know about horses? I only had 5 days to write it. My publisher called and said somebody canceled. We've got, George Littlechild, Nanika Wasis wants to work with you. He's willing to clear his schedule, but we need a story. So it was Monday morning. They called me. If you can send us a great story by Friday, 4 o'clock, you got a book deal. And literally, see, tension produces results.
Right.
When you know you've got a publisher, an editor, an artist, a potential collaborator waiting for you, that's when I do my best work.
Mhm.
I find that when the Virgo, right? We're bossy, we're nosy, we're very organized, but we secretly love to be bossed around. That's the secret. If you're in love with a Virgo, we're the doozers from Fraggle Rock. I don't know if you ever watched Fraggle Rock, the
It's
little worker bees. You got to let us work. You just give us more things to do, but
right.
don't make it complicated. Let us finish, praise us, and then give us more work, and we'll work forever for you.
I love it. Well, speaking of work, so tell us a little bit. I know you said you're working on books 2 and 3 for Wheetago. What else do you have coming up? You had the board book that you
Yeah,
said.
we've sold TV and film rights to my graphic novel series, The Spirit of Denendeh, to Loretta Todd, and she did such a huge job, such a great job with Eden Robinson's Monkey Beach.
Mhm.
And I'm a huge fan. I've been a huge fan of Loretta Todd for years. And for me to get to work with her and support her in whatever way that she needs, she wants to turn it into a feature film. And then she wants to do 6 to 8 episodes as a TV series based on those two graphic novels and several of my other short stories. So I'm excited about that. And then we've got a new movie out with Amanda Strong called Incon for When the Starving Return, and it's stop motion puppets. And
Oh,
so we just premiered at TIFF, and we're premiering nationally and internationally. So we want to work on that and make that a bigger series using stop
mm,
motion. So I'm always working on stuff. Every day is different. Sometimes, like, what I love doing is I actually love putting book sales together. I love it when somebody writes and says, I want to buy 5 of your latest books. And I get to say, well, who do you want me to autograph them
mm.
for? I love that. That makes me so happy. So sometimes it's sitting in on meetings with, different organizations that I work with. And I know you know what I'm talking about. It all needs to happen. But sometimes I've just been commissioned to write an essay on inheritance by Penguin Random House. So I'm really excited about that. So every day is different. You never know. It could be a phone call, could be an email, could be a message on Instagram, like yourself saying, how do you want to do this? Absolutely. Let's do that. Let's have fun. Let's every day is different.
I
And the
love it.
best part is you never know what's going to happen next. You
Mhm.
never ever know.
Just like in your books. That's what I felt reading it. Was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. You read a lot of books and you think, well, I kind of know what direction this is going, but with yours, I really didn't. And I'm going to make sure that we'll have the links to your website and to where people can get a hold of these. And this was so much fun to talk with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Leanna. I'm really grateful to you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your day. Masi Cho.